Dawn Montefusco, and this is Write from Your Heart, how to unleash your creativity, share your message, and leave a lasting legacy. And today we have one of my favorite people, Flora Bowley. Flora is a painter, creative pioneer, gentle guide, and author of 2 top-selling books, Brave Intuitive Painting and Creative Revolution. Blending over 20 years of professional painting experience with her background as a yoga instructor, body worker, and lifelong seeker, Flora believes creative expression is both a birthright and a crucial part of holistic well-being. Flora's soulful approach to the creative process has sparked a new holistic movement in the intuitive art world, inspiring thousands of people to courageously pick up a paintbrush, often for the first time. And Flora lives in Portland, Oregon, where I live. Flora, you're awesome. I love reading that.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
So tell us about any projects or any new things that you're up to these days.
Well, I feel like I'm coming out of a cycle where I didn't create a lot of new stuff for the last year because I had created so much, and then I really needed to take that, like, I think of it as like a big inhale for creatives when we're just resting and getting inspiration and figuring out what the next thing is. And so I've been doing that for a bit, and now because I did that, I think I have so many ideas and I'm really ready. I've got a lot of things going into motion. I'm going to be doing a few of them. I just filmed one of my live workshops, which are 5-day painting workshops. And so I had this big camera crew, and the idea behind that is that I'm going to create a virtual what am I starting to say? Like an at-home retreat where you could get my vision is that people will get their friends together and watch the videos and watch these other people going through the process, which I think is really helpful, because it's one thing for me to teach what I know and how I paint, but to see other people that are also beginning, or maybe had never done it before, going through it, and then everyone will just have the chance to do it from wherever they are in the world. So that makes me really excited. I'm also putting together a 9-month, for lack of a better word, like mentorship program, where I'm going to work with the same group of people over the course of 9 months. Because the one thing I always hear at the end of my retreats is that everybody's like really inspired, and they're like, we want to get together like us. We want our group to get together again and do something else. And so I'm realizing there's a real craving these days for going deeper and for having like true community that feels like, people you can really sink in with. So yeah, those 2 projects feel really exciting to me right now.
That sounds awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah.
This taps on the idea in creativity, where when we surround ourselves with people who are supporting us in expressing our creativity, that seems to be easier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a huge thing that I witness all the time, and I hear that from people that come to my in-person, experiences, and they're just like, it's always interesting. At the end of it, I'm always like, okay, what are your takeaways and what did you get? And half of what people say is how much they just love being together. It doesn't even have to do with they're not talking about the painting and all the things we did. They're like, I just loved being in a group of supportive, creative people. And so I think it's really huge. It's breaking down that old paradigm of the artist that's isolated, and just in the studio toiling alone. And I think that we're coming out of that in a way that and getting rid of sort of a competition energy too, of I'm going to not share what I know. I think people are just ready to be in a more collaborative way with each other.
Oh, that just gave me chills. I think that there's no scarcity when it comes to creativity. Well, there's no scarcity anyway.
Period.
That's a whole other conversation for another time. But when it comes to creativity, it's like, talk about abundance.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, who knows what's going to come out next?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
To be like hiding or full of anxiousness or afraid is a total counterintuitive part of where creativity flourishes the most. So I love that you
yes.
said, because I really want to talk about creativity with you. But before that, I want to establish, tell us about the writing part of creativity. I often get people who say, I'm a writer, but I'm not creative, because they're writing their stories of their life, or they're writing, even if they're writing essays or articles, but they really are like when you incorporate your personal story, and I don't just do personal story anymore, I do other things, but when you do that, it's equally a creative process. Can you just vouch for the idea that, like, when you're writing as an artist, that's another form of creativity, and you're not writing fiction, you're writing about what's inside of you?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I really see the creative process, and especially my particular flavor of intuitive creativity, as being, I paint mostly, but I also write, and I teach people who do all sorts of things. And I often say these concepts are very universal. And so the concepts that I teach a lot of have to do with letting go of clamping down on a specific plan. It's not like planning can't happen at all, but just this idea that we go in and we have this very specific goal that we're trying to work towards. To me, especially in my painting process, that is like the best way to get in our own way, and just to like to really get stuck, honestly, is what happens. And so I always say, if you're attached to only one idea, then you've just shut the door on every possibility that could have wanted to come in a very spontaneous, surprising way, and that to me is a lot of where the best stuff comes. It's the thing that we don't plan. And so a lot of my process is honestly encouraging and supporting people to be open to change.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, I paint in a layering process, which is, every time you add paint, something has to go in order for something else to come. And so you're constantly in motion. And I feel like it's very similar with writing, where, like, I often even use this example when I'm working with people. I say, just imagine that you just wrote a bunch of stuff, like free form, and then you went in with your editing eye and you decided, well, I can let that go. And when you're letting things go, what you're actually doing is making space for other things to happen. And so I love the comparison, actually, of writing and painting. I think we just get in our own way when we try too hard. I just see that happen like all the time. The very first thing I do in my workshops is have people close their eyes and paint with their hands to a really fun song. And it's amazing what happens on the canvases when people are literally not looking and just they're in a feeling state. That's like the emphasis of the exercise, is to feel and not to think. And it's beautiful what happens on the canvases. It's raw, it's real, it's energized, it has emotion, and then they get into thinking and then I see it all get, all of that kind of gets killed, really. And so I think it's this constant conversation that we have as creatives, as how to stay attached to that really wild and free and in the moment place, while also having our, sometimes putting our critical hat on and making choices and all of that. But one sentence I often throw out there that really sums things up is that we have to, the process I offer is about making bold commitments while staying open to change. Oh, and nice. So yeah, it kind of feels counter, but that's actually where the juice is that, because if you're with painting or with writing, if you're just kind of dabbling with your eyes closed forever, you're probably not going to get to the finish line, right? And so it's knowing, like, okay, right now I'm going to commit to closing my eyes and being free. And now I'm going to commit to making a choice. But even if I'm making that choice, like adding a color, an image, or with writing, it could be whatever what you're writing about, make it and really go for it, but then stay open to it could change, And I think that little that formula, if you will, is really powerful.
And it's great that you compared it to painting. I love it. One of the things I say, you can have a container, you're so free in the container.
Yeah.
Right? You have a container, so you might have an outline that's working. I call it a working outline.
Yeah.
You might have an idea for a chapter or a story. That's an idea. That's the container.
Yes.
And then go nuts. And then we can come back and we can look and we can see, what came out of the go nuts, right?
Yeah.
That's my technical term for
the
go nuts, But so, I love that, because wouldn't it be, you have the canvas, you have your paints, you have Flora, you have the environment, and then you get that moment of complete freedom within a container, right? Yeah. That's cool. I'm loving this.
Yeah, and I use the term banks of the river sometimes, like, because you know, what happens too is that, you know, I often say things like anything is possible and da da da, and then what that sometimes does is makes people just totally, you know, they don't know what to do because everything is possible. And so in those moments, I would offer this idea of banks of the river and I just say, you know, it's just for this layer, like just this moment. It's not the whole painting. You're not coming up with your container or your banks of the river for the whole painting, but for this moment, decide, maybe choose 3 things. Like, I'm going to choose a dark color, I'm going to use this image and this tool or whatever, you know, it could be anything. And then you create this little bank, and then you just flow. You know, you can just be like totally free within that. So it sounds, really similar.
I love it. Okay. So I'm saying with my magic wand, we've established that creativity is awesome. It's healthy. It's so necessary. Yeah. And it's actually really always there. I'm going to have this discussion with you. Why do you think it's so hard in our society for people to just accept that being creative in any way that's a free way, right? Not like because I have to do this and so that this happens and so this results happen. Just the act of creativity is not, I don't know what the word is, maybe you know, like it's not really honored. People feel guilty. They have creativity shame and guilt. What's going on?
So yeah, I think there's so many layers to that conversation, and I think we're just coming out of this old paradigm where there's this idea, there's so many ideas. One of them being that there's just these few artists with a capital A that are in the world being professional artists, and then everyone else is not an artist. Yeah. And you know, it's like I definitely grew up thinking that. I know. I didn't really know.
People say that. I'm not a writer. I'm like, you've been writing your whole life and you're awesome. Why are you not a writer? You know?
Exactly. And I think there's just a lot of you know, inner critic stuff going on. Like, it just brings up so much. Like, people will just jump to the conclusion that whatever they're creating and the value of it, like if it's good or not, reflects directly on who they are as a person, you know? And so it's an interesting thing. I also think, like you said, like there's this idea that it's not valued, that creativity is this luxurious thing and all of that. And I feel like one of my missions in life, honestly, is to break through all of that stuff and to remind folks that creativity is our birthright. It's something that we all have. It's something that's very unique to humans. And it's really at the cause of innovation and change and problem solving, and really what the world needs most right now in order to turn the tide on where we're heading is creativity. Like, I actually see it in this really big picture way, that it's not this frivolous little thing we do, that it's actually, it's like greasing the wheels of our humanity or something. You know, I've never said it like that before, but it's like if we deny our creativity, we're denying our aliveness and our humanity. You know, it's like, what are we without creativity? We become robots. You know, we do things all the same way. There's no variety. There's no spice. It's like, who wants to live in that world? You know?
No, I totally get it. What blew my mind is when I really started to work, when I shifted from life coaching to life coaching for writers and creatives, and mostly it's writers. I have some painters that come in because they want to put their paint and their art and their writing together. Mm-hmm. And this one client, like we went deep, she's amazing, and she started watercoloring again. She's a doctor. And she started out and she was complaining about her marriage. She was complaining about her body. She was complaining about life. And she was cool, but she was like, I got to vent. And I was like, okay. And I was like, just 15 minutes a day. Like, the first 15 minutes was getting the brushes and then the canvas. And then, you know, and I was like, start there. And sure enough, all of a sudden, 6 months later, and I had written this on her file. She said, you know, it's really interesting. My marriage is so amazing lately. You know, interesting. My health is so great. My sleep is so wonderful. And then she caught herself and she goes, oh my God, you told me this. And I was like, whoa, it was so, now that I'm doing it more and more with people, I'm kind of freaked out about how it's so directly connected to their health, to their well-being, and to their perspective of their life. And their life didn't change all that much, but their perspective changed. You've probably seen this happen so much. Can you speak to that way of like the transformation?
Yeah, that was what my whole second book was all about. Because I wrote my first book, which was really about the process, the painting process. But then after I wrote that book, I taught hundreds and hundreds of people and thousands of people online. And I saw this happen, like what you just explained. I get emails every day from people that say that they've had these huge life transformations as a result of them reconnecting to their creativity. And so that was what I was like, I need to write a book about that, because that's really powerful. And so that was what Creative Revolution was all about. And I think there's so many, I think it's different for everybody. I don't think it's something that I could say, well, it's because that this happens. I think we're also unique, and where we're showing up in our life, like the moment of that and what we need. I always see these kind of two. This is just one aspect of how we're different, but I see these kind of two types of people often that come to my workshops. I have the people that have a really hard time letting go and being free. Like they would call themselves, and they often do, they call themselves control freaks. And so, I get those folks, and my process is just, I tell them, I'm like, all we're doing is practicing letting go and being more flexible and being open to change and getting comfortable without a plan. And when you practice that hours a day, you can't help but have that effect. Like, it's like you're flexing that muscle, and whether you're painting or you're making life decisions, it's going to flow between. And then I get the other end of the spectrum of people that are sort of like really comfortable in the wild and free part that we were talking about. Like they can close their eyes and throw paint around all day long and be really happy there. But the work for them is making a choice and moving things forward and like committing to things. And so we get to practice that too in the process. We're just practicing. And it's so nice to be able to practice in a creative practice, because I always say it's just paint. Like, it's just paint, you guys. Like, there's no one's gonna die. It's just, and we make it mean a lot more. But if we can remember that it's just paint and that we really are, and for me, if I can just always remember that really all I'm doing is practicing ways of being that I want to be in my life, and that's more important than the actual whatever's happening on the canvas, then it's just this, it's a really forgiving, gentle thing that we get to do that helps us in so many ways. It's really quite profound. Yeah.
So amazing.
Yeah.
It's great when you the control freaks and the letting go process. Here's a question too. So words are a pain in the ass because they're words, because they mean something, right? Like words actually do to some degree mean something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you're painting, I mean, obviously you can make it mean a lot of things, but there's something about language that I feel people really are afraid of. They get afraid to write it down, whatever it is. Can you speak into like doing that letting go, you're not going to die, when it comes to words? Like maybe there were times when you were writing maybe more the Brave Intuitive Painting, you wrote that so gorgeously, by the way. Yeah. And I mean, poetically, you wrote the truth. So I want you to take that in, because you're really good at that. But you must have had a moment, I'm assuming.
Many.
You're like, Did you use your own process when you were writing to get out of that control?
Oh yeah, I really did. Well, it's interesting. The story of that book is that I had only taught one workshop, and there happened to be an author like scout at the workshop place that I taught. And so I got asked to write that book the week after I had taught my very first workshop. And so here I am just figuring out how to even put into words what I do in this very wordless, intuitive process. I'm like, oh my God, I have to teach this with words. And then it was like, now I have to write a book that has a beginning and an end. It was a really big leap for me, and I didn't consider myself a writer then. I do now, but I definitely was one of those people that I was like, I'm not a writer, I'm a painter. So it was a leap in so many ways for me to write that book, but I really did always circle back around to my own advice and my own philosophy that I am really confident in when it comes to painting. And so thankfully I had that inside of me, with lots of practice under my belt. And so I divided, a big breakthrough was that I divided the book into 3 sections. And that, once I got that figured out, it was like, okay, now I think I can wrap my brain around this. And so the first section was let go, right? Let go. And then it was be bold. And then it was unfold. Let go, be bold, unfold. And that was how the painting process kind of goes. And I realized those were the 3 big things that have to happen. First, you have to let go of all your stories of, I can't do this. You have to let go of all your stories of, it has to be this way, all of it. You have to clear space. And this is the same for writing. It's like you have to clear space for it to actually come through. Yes. And then you have the be bold part is actually writing the thing, or painting. It's like trying stuff on, being out in that place of experimentation and improv, like, yes. Just doing the thing. And then the unfold is like, that's where it's, it's like things don't start to unfold until you're in action.
Yes,
right?
totally true.
And you can't get in action until you let go of a bunch of stuff. So it was like, that really helped me to get that structure clear. And then, and then I just, I did a lot of soul searching during that writing time, and like really, because I love that you said that I wrote the truth in a poetic way, because I really was digging, for what is this, what is this process all about? Why are we doing it? Like, what's the underlayer of why you would do this, not just the action items of this is how you move your brush around, And so, yeah, it was a great experience for me to write that and to have it, become a book that people actually got.
I love it. I love the 3-part process. That's actually what I do with people when it's the easiest thing. You just let's look at this. Let's divide it into 3. 3 is a magic number. Now the brain goes, oh. And ultimately, it's the beginning, middle, end. Then we can make it a theme of some sort. So good job. That's awesome. It's one of my favorite things. Divide things up in 3s.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's see. When did you first know? Very traditional question, but I love it. When did you first know that you want to write a book? Was it just because someone told you, or did you have it in the back of your head a little bit?
I never thought about writing a book. Well, because I had never. You have to understand that I'd never even thought of teaching.
Oh wow.
Until somebody asked me to teach. I was at a place in my life where I realized that I knew there was something else. Like I felt there was another whole thing to my work that I didn't know what it was yet. After I'd become a professional painter, which for me was my dream job. Like I worked to get to that for like 15 years. I worked really hard to become a painter, and I got there. And then I realized, oh, there's something missing here, which was like kind of a crisis feeling at the time. But I realize now it was just my soul being like, there's more. And so then I taught, I was asked to teach this workshop, taught the workshop, was asked to write the book. And I had never seen this coming, that I would be sharing about my, painting process. I just always thought that I would be making paintings and like selling paintings, which is what I did for a long time. So yeah, it was a surprise.
That's great. I just interviewed Gay Hendricks. He wrote a great book, new book called The Joy of Genius. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He did The Big Leap.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So he did The Big Leap. He does a lot of relationship stuff, but he did this book, The Joy of Genius. And in it, he talked all about creativity. I'll send it to you. You'll love it.
I love it. Yeah.
And so he says there's 2 kinds of creativity. One is ordinary creativity, and that's when you're either only doing it for yourself or you're only doing it because someone else is telling you. But true creativity is when you're doing it because it feeds you and you want to share it and help others, and it's kind of this energy flow. And so
Yeah.
you just kind of said that. It's really fascinating how when we share, so writers can also, I think it's funny, people that haven't written a lot, or they'll hold on to it, right? But then as soon as they, like you said, you can't see what's on the other side unless you start going down the path.
Yeah.
And as they continue to write and let go,
Yeah.
inevitably they want to share it.
Yeah.
Like inevitably, even if they started with, I don't want to show this to anyone. Does that happen in painting too? Do people be like, well, I just want to put it over here, and then as soon as they start getting that, feedback loop, they get all excited to.
Oh yeah, that definitely. Well, in my experience, so often people come in with so many stories that are negative about their abilities, and then I lead them through this kind of approach, and they cannot believe what they made. Like they're super proud of it, and they're just like, oh my God, like I can't believe I made that. And then they should, and now we live in this day where social media is so, everybody does social media, and so there's this. The feedback loop is much more immediate, I guess. Right? Because you post it on Facebook, and then all of a sudden you get everybody saying what they say. And yeah, I see it happen all the time where I'll have, just in my last workshop this last weekend, I had someone say, oh my God, my friends want to buy my paintings. And this was a woman that had never painted before. These were her first paintings ever, And I could say a lot of things about waiting to sell stuff, because I feel like there's a lot of reasons to not jump into that world also, but it is nice to get the kind of positive reinforcement.
Oh, that's fantastic. I just love it. So wait, I just lost my train of thought. Hold on, pause. I'll edit this. I just had a question for you that I was like, I'm so excited. Then I stopped. Painting, show it to people. All right, I guess we'll just keep going. Okay. One more thing, hold on. So what about the spiritual aspect of creativity? So I'm going to go there because some people don't want to go there. I like going there. There's, when it comes to universe, God, and spirit, wouldn't that be like one of the greatest ways to honor our spirituality is to create, period?
I think so. I think it's very much sacred space that we're moving in when we're in a creative process. That's why I always have like an altar in my studio, and I light a candle, and it's like a stepping out of the ordinary, to-do lists and life and everything, into this space where I think, it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's like, I do think of myself as just kind of a vessel. And the more I can get out of my own way, the more spirit can flow through, and usually the more interesting things become. It's like when I'm in there with my just ego mind trying to create stuff, it feels kind of contrived, and so that's why so much of my process is about doing all these things to let go. It's like paint with your non-dominant hand, hold the brush at the very end, close your eyes, like let the music guide you, like all these things just to get into sort of a more a more ethereal, kind of mystical, magical place to let it come through there.
Have you ever painted, I know this happens to writers, have you ever painted something and gone back to it like a day or two later and go, whoa, I made that? Like you almost were in such a trance you didn't remember exactly what it looked like, and then you almost saw it with new eyes? Because I feel like that's the channeling. Like we get in that zone, and all of a sudden when we visit it, we go, whoa, who came to the studio while I was gone?
Totally. Oh yeah, I feel that happens to me all the time, actually. There's, to me, another thing I'm always saying about my process is that it's a presence practice, because it's just which we all need that, right? Like who doesn't need to practice being present? Like it's something that's really hard to do, and it's where all of life is happening, is in the present moment. And so I feel like that's one of the things I love about painting, is that it just drops me right into the present moment. Like time just goes away, and I'm really in that space. And so, I definitely come back, the next day, like and I'm like, wow, I didn't even, like who knew that was going to happen?
I love also that you said you never saw it coming about the teaching. That was something I remembered I wanted to ask or say, is I love how you can't know unless you walk down the path. So
Yeah.
lots of people, they'll say, well, well, I want to know what's going to happen to my book when I write it.
Yeah.
Like, hold on, you're sitting in a car and you're asking me what the view looks like at the top of the mountain and you don't want to get out, right? So how are you going to, so that's really interesting that your life sort of unfolded like a painting unfolds. Like, and I think that when we tap in, we're open to what's going to come.
Yeah.
And magic happens.
Absolutely. And I think it's really human nature to want to know what's going to happen. Like people want to know. They just do. It's a safety.
Yeah.
Safety. And when we don't know, then anything is possible, and that can feel really, really scary, but that is life. Like that is life. And so that's why this painting practice or your writing practice allows people to try it on, and just practice. I've used that word like a million times, but I guess that's the thing here.
Meditation practice, like mindfulness practice.
Yeah, yoga practice.
It's a great word because there's no perfection, and it's long.
Yeah,
it's fun.
It doesn't end. It doesn't end. Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, really. So yeah, I think it's a great, that's a feedback I get a lot from my students, is how much this process has helped them be more comfortable in the mystery.
Oh yeah, nice.
Of life, of everything. And that's such a gift, really. That makes, because when you think about anxiety and depression and fear and all those things that so many of us struggle with, it's a lot of it comes from not being able to just be okay in the mystery,
True.
And so the more, if we have a way to practice that, it's a beautiful thing.
Oh, that's great. There's we're running out of time, but I wanted to say there's something you said to me 2 years ago when we did our last interview, and I was leaving your home, and you said, well, life is long. And it was funny because most people say life is short.
Yeah.
I kid you not, for 2 years, it still stays in my head in a beautiful way. When I get anxious, because sometimes the anxiousness is, I got to get this done fast, or, oh my God, what if, and I hear Flora in my head, and she says, honey, life is long. And when I start to realize that word practice means more, like, okay, it could be short and it could be long. So let's practice and just keep going back. So I want to say your energy and your phrases are just magical. So I think you use words very, very, very magically, eloquently, and you nail it. Like you really get in there. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
So you have a free gift for us.
I do. I have a really cool series of videos. I basically plucked videos from all my online courses that kind of stand alone in the teaching. And so I've put them together, and I call it your creative kickstart. And so, I'd be happy to share all of those and give everybody just a taste of all the stuff I've been talking about. And keen to do some painting, then I've got lots of things available.
Yeah, you got a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Quick question for the audience. So can they sign up to also come to your workshops in person? Do you still, how does that work? Yeah,
so I announce all my in-person workshops through my newsletter. So if you sign up for the Creative Kickstart, you're going to be on my newsletter, unless you choose not to be. But my workshops sell out really fast. And so they don't actually make it to social media. I never announce them on social media. It's always just for my newsletter subscribers. If anyone wants to come paint in person, which is the best, I will say, it's amazing. Like we talked about in the beginning, with being with people in the room. So just look out for the newsletters. And I also share a lot of just creative tips and encouragement through my newsletters. I try to keep them mostly in that department and not so much selling stuff all the time. So
that's a great way to get to know you and to get sneak peeks into things. Thank you so much. This is awesome. It's been such a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, I always love chatting with you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Well, have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.